to hold, 'cause I'm made of stardust, and my soul can reach beyond the stars.
Okay, welcome to the Symposium on Paraprofessional Approaches to Self-Transcendence, Examples Involving Spirituality and Jungian Shadow Work. We have 3 presentations today, and stay tuned. And now I'm going to hand over to Dr. Ken Hart.
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Yes, this is Paraprofessional Approaches to Self-Transcendence, Examples Involving Spirituality and Jungian Shadow Work. And this session gives 2 examples of community-based paraprofessional interventions that seek to promote flourishing. Consistent with the holistic model of optimal well-being proposed by Carl Jung, we define flourishing as an ego-transcendent reconciliation of the repressed dark shadow with the repressed light shadow. Presentation number 1 will be called the Golden Shadow Method, and it's based on this book right here, A Path of Awakening Your Full Potential by Melanie Ryan, who was here with us. The second presentation is entitled A Zoom-Based Paraprofessional Approach to Jungian Shadow Work, and that will be given by myself and Shawn Sharkey, who here is with us here. The third presentation is entitled Pitfalls of Pollyanna New Thought Spirituality Groups. And that was supposed to be given by Reverend Charles Taylor of the Universal Truth Center in Florida, but he had a scheduling conflict, so he won't be presenting. Just 2 presentations, so that third one has been canceled. And also there's been a slight change in the sequence of the presentations, and let me hand off to Melanie Ryan, who will start off.
Thank you, Ken, and hello, everyone. Really happy to be here, really grateful to be here and to present on the Golden Shadow Method. The Golden Shadow Method is a method of shadow work. It's an online program, and it's also a book that Ken just talked about, which they're using in their online study group. So I'll be talking about the Golden Shadow Method as the founder and what it's really about and how you might be able to apply it to your own life, your own personal growth and spiritual growth, as well as how you can use it with your clients. So the Golden Shadow Method is a recipe for transformation. It's really the weaving of ancient wisdom, and it incorporates 3 pillars, so 3 ingredients to the method. And it includes Jungian psychology and techniques, Buddhist philosophy and meditation, and shamanic spiritual philosophy and healing transformation techniques. So this came about because of my own personal journey as a psychotherapist. I've been a licensed clinical social worker for 25 plus years now. And along the way, I struggled with my own chronic illnesses since childhood, actually, from physical illness to anxiety and panic attacks. And I really was searching. I had gone through psychotherapy for many years. I had come across Carl Jung's work in college, but never really dove in personally to use it for my own healing until much later in life. My first experience with shadow work was actually through Buddhist meditation and shamanism. And later on, I ended up coming back around to Carl Jung when I was writing the Golden Shadow Method. So Jung basically came to me sort of in spirit and said, if you're going to write a book on the shadow, you better talk about me. And so lots of people don't really understand what the shadow is as Jung gave it to us. The shadow has really gotten a very negative connotation to it that focuses primarily on the dark side, the evil side, the side of our wounds and our aggressions and our fears, which are all very important for us to work with, and it's part of the Golden Shadow Method. However, the Golden Shadow Method really shines a light on the whole shadow, which Carl Jung defined the shadow as everything that is hidden, everything that is unconscious to us, everything that we have disowned and forgotten and buried. So the golden shadow actually brings a balance to this sort of attachment that we have gotten to as far as just the dark, aggressive, and evil side that we may be hiding. It also talks about the golden side, what the Buddhists call Buddha nature, the golden Buddha that we all have within. And this talks about our inherent wisdom, our intuition, our untapped and unlimited creativity. And so how this is so profound right now, especially on our planet, as things seem to be falling apart, is that it's also a time of creativity. It's a time of discovering our inherent wisdom and the gifts that we have inside of us, the talents, our deepest desires, and how can we create a new life for ourselves as things appear to be falling apart. So the duality of the shadow of being both dark and golden is something that I really emphasize in my book. And the shamans talk about the dark and the light being part of nature, right? There's a sunrise and there's a sunset. So there's heaven and earth, as above, so below, the yin and the yang, the masculine and the feminine, right? And so all of the ancient lineages actually talk about the balance and the interconnectedness and the relationship between dark and light, or the dark shadow and the golden shadow. So as we are doing our work, it is so important for us to understand and have a correct perspective about how dark and light works together, that there is a relationship. And this is how we find meaning and purpose in our lives, is that we take a step back and sort of see things from a larger perspective. Nature always has a cycle of creation and destruction. There's always a sunrise and a sunset. And the Mayans say you can't see the stars without the dark behind it, supporting it. So we're all somewhat familiar with Joseph Campbell's, The Dark Night of the Soul, and how we need to go into the underworld, into these dark places to go through trials and tribulations and initiations in order to achieve awareness, wakefulness. We are here on this earth school, right? We're here to awaken. We're here to evolve. We're here to remember, have a very deep remembering. And so our pain does have a purpose. Our wounds have wisdom. On the Buddhist path, we talk about, the purpose of suffering is to attain wisdom and compassion. So these are great teachings from 3 different lineages. Carl Jung, talked a lot about we do not awaken without pain, right? So we see this cross-culturally. We see this in so many different places, from Jung's teachings to the Buddhist teachings to shamanic teachings to metaphysics to mystery schools across the board. All religions and spiritualities have this in common, that we need to understand that there is meaning and purpose. And so for me, my illnesses were my greatest teachers. The most difficult people in my life were my greatest teachers. And so there's a shift from feeling like a victim to actually having gratitude, to be able to say thank you to the person who annoys us the most, to say thank you for maybe twisting your ankle because that made you slow down and you had been working so hard and you finally got time to rest, right? So there's this perspective of everything is working for us, not against us. And there are no victims. We're only here to learn. And there are great lessons to be had in all of the lineages that I present. So I do an online workshop where it's 6 live workshops, and then there's 2 weeks in between where people are using exercises and real life is happening. So they're getting triggered and they're learning how to turn triggers into treasures, I call it in my book. That we don't need to view triggers as something negative. Triggers actually connect us to the shadow. They have a direct connection. It's like a telephone line to communicate to our shadow. And all of the techniques and all of the lineages that I teach on are different vehicles to communicate to our shadow so that we can awaken more and more. Because as we awaken and as we heal, there's wounds that are connected to those triggers. As we heal them and integrate them, we don't get triggered anymore. And how amazing is that? It's completely freeing to walk around and be able to stay grounded and clear and not have all the wounded parts of you get triggered all the time. So I call it triggers or treasures, because we turn wounds into wisdom and we turn pain into power. And this is how we achieve our potential. Our potential is always there. So on the Buddhist path, the Buddha nature talks about the golden Buddha underneath all of the mud, that we sort of acquire over time. The mud symbolizing, the wounds and the fears and the habitual patterns, the false beliefs that we have about ourselves. It gets all covered up. And in meditation, we start to become aware of that. We start to become aware of habitual patterns. We have a very direct experience of our mind. So the meditation that I teach is called Shamatha Vipassana. I'm authorized as a Buddhist teacher in the Shambhala lineage of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who was a Buddhist master that came here in 1970. So his lineage is very profound, and his teachings are called the Shambhala teachings. And he talks about something called basic goodness. And basic goodness is that everything is basically good. It's that it's sort of symbolic as like a flower arrangement, that there's different flowers and different colors and different textures all weaving together and working together. And dark and light, shadows, and that it all comes together like a mandala principle, right? So everything, again, is working for us. And we start to wake up to that. We start to wake up to it as we start to make friends with ourselves and make friends with our pain. We start to discover the wisdom that is waiting for us and our true nature, our golden Buddha, our Buddha nature that is within. So I walked this path for 15 years. I met a Buddhist teacher and I met a shaman at the same time, almost the same month of the same year. Talk about synchronicity. So they came into my life to give me these teachings. And I didn't start to teach it right away, obviously. I had to go through my own personal transformations. And then adding Jung's techniques on top of it of shadow projection, what I say, it makes the perfect banana bread. It's like my secret recipe of like the most amazing banana bread, And so each piece is required to have the transformation happen. So these are the 3 pillars: Jung in the shadow, Buddha and the shadow, shaman in the shadow. And they're all shadow work immersions to learn how to communicate with your shadow, how to awaken. And there's other ways to communicate with your shadow, like through dreams. In shamanism, dream work goes way back. for hundreds of thousands of years, but something called shamanic journeying, which is very close to active imagination, Carl Jung's active imagination. They're very similar. Shamans sort of add a little bit more to active imagination, where you might work outside, work in nature, and bring in a level of sacredness and using flowers and water and fire and things like that, because shamans are very close to the earth. Carl Jung, I think, brought it more into a clinical setting, which is great. So we can do it in an office as well. But, you know, I teach a lot of therapists. I think it's very important. I think we have a personal responsibility to do our own work and know that it never ends. There is no finish line. So I'm constantly working on myself so that I can then take my clients and my students very far, very deep into the shadow, because we can only really take people as far as we have gone ourselves. So I say I'm kind of like a scuba diving instructor, you know, like the shadow being this vast ocean. And so I can take people into the shallow end and we can swim around and, you know, see what's going on in the coral, or we can go into the open water and really go deep. So if you go deep, then you can also guide people into the depths of their psyche. But we can't do it unless we've done it ourselves first, right? Because we can't really teach something that we don't know ourselves. So I'm really, really passionate about that. And I work a lot with psychotherapists and doctors and nurses and other healers, because for whatever reason, I can go deep because I've gone pretty deep myself. I've gone very deep myself. So it's something I'm passionate about. My hope is that everyone eventually would be interested in shadow work, and being that they can come into the golden shadow through a lot of different doors. They can come in through Jung in the shadow, or they can come in through Buddha in the shadow, or shaman in the shadow, and do what feels right to them. I'm not into, you know, forcing anyone, but I do really recommend the whole recipe, because obviously I want everyone to have the whole banana bread, right? The way that I make it. No missing ingredient. But, you know, we want to give people a choice, right? So, so thank you very much. I'm not sure if my time is up yet. 2 more minutes? 2 more minutes. Okay. So, so what I can say in 2 minutes is that from a psychotherapy point of view, what I have found probably to be the most shocking to me when students and when I did it myself, I found that I no longer needed any kind of medication, right? That this healing work, I was able to reverse all of my anxiety. I was able to reverse all of my chronic physical illnesses. I was, like I said, I was diagnosed with COPD. But what I found in myself was there was so much emotional shadow stuff living in my body that once I connected to it through these techniques, it literally just dissolved like magic. Sounds kind of crazy, but that's what happened. And then I see that happen with my students and my clients as well. So it's a very profound experience. But shadow work is work. It's not easy. I tell people it's not shadow relaxation, it's shadow work. So we have to be ready to really work at this. And I love providing a community. I've always been someone to bring people together. So doing live workshops online, not recordings, but like to have a community where you can talk to your peers and talk to me and be mentored by me. And I have a Facebook group as well. So community is really important, to know that we're not doing this alone. And so I welcome you to check that out. You can find me on Facebook and on Instagram and join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Megan, can you give me the co-host status so I can screen share?
So right now you cannot. I think I make everybody can share their screen.
Oh, okay. I see that I am co-host now. Thank you. Can everybody see that? Melanie, can you see that?
Yes.
Awesome. So again, just to remind you, this is paraprofessional approaches to self-transcendence, examples involving spirituality and Jungian shadow work. And I've already given the introduction. Melanie, thank you very much. We're moving on to the second presentation, a Zoom-based paraprofessional approach to Jungian shadow work. And that's by myself and Shawn, Sharkey. And again, the third presentation, Pitfalls of Pollyanna New Thoughts Spiritual Groups, was supposed to be given by Reverend Charles Taylor of the Universal Truth Center in Florida, and he will not be giving that talk. He's a New Thought minister. Very rare for them to be speaking about Pollyanna New Thought spirituality. All right. So a Zoom-based paraprofessional approach to Jungian shadow work. And again, just to reiterate, maybe there are some new people who are new to this concept. They're curious. So a little bit about the shadow. Melanie did an excellent job reviewing it. It is a term coined by Carl Jung, refers to psychic material that has been repressed into the unconscious. So I think about it as being in the rearview mirror on your automobile. When you're looking out to the rearview mirror on your door, there is a blind spot there. So this is what we're dealing with. This is this blind spot. Material consists of hidden aspects of one's personal identity, both negative, the dark shadow, and positive. These are the virtues, the golden shadow or the light shadow, goes by different names. And again, the emphasis here with Melanie's book is on the positive, because most of the books that are out there, and there aren't too many books out there for educated lay people that have practical utility, but of those that are out there, the vast majority of them focus on the negative shadow, the dark shadow. And so it was really a delight to see Melanie's book on the golden shadow, A Path to Awakening Your Full Human Potential. Now, according to Jungian theory, people's efforts to self-actualize are either sabotaged or impeded when shadow material remains outside the awareness of ego consciousness. So this is one of the reasons people are interested in that, to avoid the sabotage or the impediments. So shadow work involves psychological archaeology. I really like using that term, psychological archaeology. Digging deep into the psyche to make the unconscious conscious. And that can be a really anxiety-provoking project. And so Melanie talked about the importance of having a community of peers on the same journey, a support group, and to create a sacred container and to create a safe container. And you will see, I'll try to explain how Shawn and I engineered that so that that we would try to make that happen, so that people would be less reluctant to dig down deep and find what's in the unconscious. Psychological archaeology is really the theme of Melanie Ryan's book, The Shadow Method, A Path to Awakening Your Full Human Potential. A little bit about describing our Zoom-based approach to shadow work. We tried to make it accessible during the pandemic. Had there been no pandemic, we would have been doing this in the confines of our church, and we would have been only dealing with members of the congregation and possibly a couple of people from the community who might have heard it through Facebook. But because we went on Zoom because of the pandemic, we were able to have a much broader reach. We've done this twice now, and I'm going to talk about the second time. And the first time we had someone from Trinidad, Tobago, and someone from New Zealand. The New Zealand person dropped out after 2 weeks because of the time zone difference. So Shawn, Sharkey, and I led a church-based community outreach project. That's what we're dealing with here, a church-based community outreach project. And the church happens to be the Unity Spiritual Center of Windsor here in Windsor, Ontario, Canada. We're just located right across the river from Detroit. It was marketed to potential attendees as a book study, but actually it is a psychoeducational intervention. It's so much more than a book study. In terms of marketing and recruitment of participants, there were postings in the church-based newsletter that went out. We also created a shadow work group on Facebook, and that's really how we got all of the non-congregant members. About half of the people are from the US and half of them are from Canada, including out in Alberta and here in Ontario as well. So we populated the Facebook group with pithy quotes and memes from Jung, and also plenty of Jungian symbols and imagery, symbols of the snake shedding its skin, symbols of the butterfly, the metamorphosis from the caterpillar to the butterfly, and lots of symbols of the phoenix, the transformation, the burning, and then the renewal. The name given to our Facebook group, if anybody's interested, you can just search for Birthing Your Hidden Golden Shadow. We use the word birthing intentionally with premeditated thought because birthing is both painful and joyful. And this is exactly the description of the shadow work. It is birthing. So you can't give birth to a child without some pain. So that joy requires, there's a prerequisite there. And this is very much consistent with existential positive psychology, or PP 2.0, as Paul Wong calls it. The participant pool, the people who we attracted, there were 175 people subscribed to our Facebook group. We advertised for about 2 or 3 months before we had our launch meeting. And during that time, we attracted 105 people subscribed to our Facebook group. And of these, 12 completed the registration process for the free of cost book study. It was a very rigorous registration process. We had lots of screening questions for people who we thought might have been harmed, people who have seriously attempted suicide in the last 6 months. We screened them out, and we had it was a pretty rigorous registration process. Our Zoom launch event was held on May 19th, 2021. So we're coming up onto 3 months now. We're still meeting because there are 12 chapters in Melanie's book, and we meet once a week. So that's 12 weeks later. That's 3 months later. We're still meeting. The Golden Shadow Dancer group is these 12 people call themselves the Golden Shadow Dancer group, and we're still meeting weekly. We're now on chapter 11 of Melanie's book, Melanie's 12-chapter book. I'm getting all these pop-ups here, just excuse me. I'd like to differentiate between content and process. And the content was the book authored by Melanie Ryan. Again, the Golden Shadow Method, A Path of Awakening Your Full Human Potential. That's the content. Melanie did a good job talking about the content. My presentation is more about the process. You could plug just about any content into this if you want to do a book study, which is not really a book study, but a psychoeducational intervention. You could use other books, and we have. We used a book by David Rico the first time we did this, and that was called Shadow Dancing. And so we did. This is the second time we've done this online, and we moved to Melanie's book, and we're very happy about that. So we're going to talk about how we delivered the Golden Shadow Method and the processes surrounding that on Zoom and Facebook. The process that I'm going to emphasize revolved around 12 weekly Zoom sessions. Each session was 2 hours. We meet every Wednesday night, and we're still meeting. We'll be meeting this coming Wednesday as well. And by the way, Shawn and I are doing this as volunteers. We're unpaid volunteers. And this is a community outreach project on behalf of the spiritual center, our church. Now, we had some goals or expected learning outcomes. You can tell that I'm a teacher when I start talking about learning outcomes. But number one, to give participants a quick but practical introduction to shadow work. And that's the thing that Shawn and I loved about Melanie's book, is that the chapters are short, and so it's not a barrier to continued participation. It's not, and also there are plenty of active participation exercises involved. So she's putting the theory into practice, and it's the practice that we were really attracted to. Second learning outcome or expected goal was to give practice in identifying projections. Melanie talked about turning triggers into treasures, and the idea when somebody triggers you, really they're mirroring an aspect of yourself that you're alienated from. That's the Jungian theory of projection. If you're disgusted with somebody, then actually what that means is you're disgusted with yourself, but you're not aware that you're disgusted with yourself, but you're not taking ownership of that self-hatred, and you're projecting it and seeing it on others. So participants got a lot of practice in identifying their projections and then trying to take them back to. Goals and expected learning outcomes. Number 3, to learn how to take back projections and take ownership. This is how people got glimpses of what is hidden in their blind spot through the triggers. And really the triggers were treasures, as Melanie said. People kept journals, and they would come to the group, they would come to the Zoom meetings prepared to talk about their triggers and what they learned might be lurking in their unconscious. Both negative reactions to people and positive reactions of envy, positive reactions of jealousy, positive reactions of admiration, of pedestalizing others. That is all about identifying one's own golden shadow. And there was a real strong emphasis on that. And the last, well, there's many learning goals, but a fourth one is to befriend both the dark shadow and the light shadow. And this is the term that we use, and this is a common term used, of befriending both the dark shadow and the light shadow. So what might have been fearful becomes friendly. That is the goal. And by the way, in 12 weeks, we really are just scratching the surface. All we're doing here is planting a seed. We don't believe that people are, I mean, Jung did this for decades, and I don't know if he ever fully individuated. But yes, this is a mechanism through which people can individuate. But we were just in 12 weeks planting a seed here. More about the content. Each week prior to attending the Zoom session, the group reads a chapter in Melanie Ryan's book, prior to showing up. And then the group also completes an experiential personal growth exercise. Just about all the chapters in her book have experiential personal growth exercises. And special attention was given to journaling about that, and then coming to the group Zoom sessions prepared to share what they journaled and their experience. More about the process during the 2-hour Zoom classes. What happened during the 2-hour Zoom classes? Well, the 12 participants enter different breakout rooms after about 15 minutes in the big room. So Shawn and I are in the big room. We make some announcements. We say some general housekeeping things, and then we send them to two different breakout rooms with two groups of 6. Then meet concurrently for 105 minutes. The groups were tasked initially to come up with a name for their group. And so the one group, they ended up settling on the term, "We are the Phoenix group." And the other group ended up settling on the term that "We are the Butterfly group." And so there is a real bonding between, amongst those 6 people in the Phoenix group, because they meet for 105 minutes and have done so for the last 12 weeks. And you get to know people really, really, really well. And you become much more comfortable about sharing embarrassing things, sharing things that are fearful, sharing secrets. So this is a closed group. You cannot enter this during week 1 or week 2 or week 3. This is not a revolving door situation. I'm a member of the Butterfly group. Shawn is a member of the Phoenix group. The structure of the 105-minute small groups. Yes, each week a different leader facilitates the sequence of activities. So we don't have a leader. Nobody looks at another person as a leader of the Phoenix group. There is no leader, because there's a different leader each week. And we don't call them a leader, we call them a facilitator. So we're trying to inculcate a sense of ownership amongst the people in the groups. The facilitator follows a script created by myself and Shawn. We use the same basic template every week, and then we send them the script through Facebook Messenger, and people volunteer. There's a lot of service jobs, and one of them is the facilitator. And everybody, all 6 people in each group will at least one time serve as the facilitator. And that is understood, and they acquiesce to that, and they agree to that. The script structures the time in the breakout group. So the script is really the order of the meeting, and it segments the 105 minutes into blocks. Some of them are small blocks, they're only 6 minutes. Some of them are large blocks, and they will be 30 minutes, and we'll be doing different activities during these different blocks. We call them rounds. Each segment is called a round. Now let me explain why. Example, let's go around the room in 30 minutes. If there are 6 people there, do the math, and they're each given 5 minutes to share, then that equals a 30-minute round. After each person shares, well, we'll talk about that. There is no feedback in terms of others commenting or giving words of wisdom or pearls of advice. We'll talk about what we call altruistic silent listening. But that's a round, and not all the rounds are given 5 minutes, but many of them are. The structure of the script for the breakout groups is patterned on processes found in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, is patterned on processes involved in the Mankind Project. And I'm both a 30-year member of AA, clean and sober for 30 years. And that's really what got me on my spiritual path, as I did a sea change at that time, 30 years ago, 29 years ago. And also I'm a member of the Mankind Project and support groups. So the structure of the script for the breakout groups is patterned on processes found in the spirit group format. And there is a manual given to us by our church, and it's called the Spirit Group Host Training Guide, Preparation for Small Group Ministry. And we've sort of melded bits and pieces of that training manual into our structure. Structure of the script for the breakout groups. There are service jobs, and the idea of the service jobs came from the training manual, the host training guide, and both Shawn and I were trained by our minister. And so part of this framework is that each person in the small groups will have a number of service jobs, and this helps them to take ownership. I already mentioned the service job of facilitator, but we have a timekeeper. So someone is a timekeeper, not the facilitator, and the facilitator say, listen, we got 5 minutes. Each person, we're going to go around the room. Each person's got 5 minutes to share about their experiential growth exercise in Melanie's book, and we need someone to give somebody a 1 minute heads up. And sure enough, after 1 minute, they'll put a sign up and it'll say 1 minute. So there are a number of service jobs. There is a number of service jobs. This is a leaderless group. I should say that there's a milestones person. This is a job, and this person is given time to ask, does anybody have a milestone that they want to share with the group this week? So somebody, our youngest member was 17 when she started the group. She just turned 18, and around the same time, she just graduated from high school. She's 17, now she's 18. So she would pipe up and say, yeah, I finally turned 18. I'm legal. I can go and have a drink. And so, yes, there was a milestones person recognizing important transitions in people's lives. Yes, it was a leaderless group. There's sharing of homework exercises from Ryan's book. We usually gave about 5 minutes for each person, and then the timekeeper would give them a 1 minute heads up. The other people, if there were 6 people in the group, and let's say I was sharing, the other 6 people would maintain a altruistic silent listening. They would have the mindset that they will not be giving feedback. They will not be dispensing pearls of wisdom. What that does is it frees them up to be 100% attentive and available, and to be present, so that the person speaking, the person sharing, feels that they have been heard. And that's a lot easier when, and then of course we explain this principle of altruistic silent listening. Sometimes it's called compassionate silent listening. Sometimes it's called deep listening. But we did, and it works wonders, because people don't fear getting negative feedback or are being misunderstood. Oftentimes people give feedback and it lands the wrong way on the person and saying, that's not at all what I was trying to say. And then they feel misunderstood. So by remaining silent, we avoid that problem. Structure of the script for the breakout groups: sharing of spiritual stretch. Each week, they shared a spiritual stretch. For example, number 6. 6 means if there's 6 people in the group, each person was given 3 minutes. That equals an 18-minute round. So we had to divvy up the 105 minutes into these blocks, which we called rounds. The spiritual stretch questionnaire was based on the questionnaire in this training manual, Spirit Group Host Training Guide, Preparation for Small Group Ministry. And I adapted it so that it was intentions. These are things that you can do. You can count how many of these things that you've done in a week. They are action-oriented items. Now, there's about 30 of them there. Open and close with prayer and meditation. Shawn usually does the prayer. We have a guy named Randy from Kentucky. He does a loving kindness meditation, and that's how we open the meeting. And that's also how we close the Phoenix group and how we close the butterfly group. There are icebreaker rounds. Icebreakers are, for example, if you were a superhero, what power would you like and why? And so people respond to it and they go around the room. So this is kind of a fun. And the idea is engagement. The idea is engagement. The idea is fun. We don't want this to be serious or somber. We don't want this to be like, people are at a funeral. You know, icebreakers are often quite fun and funny. People will laugh. You know, I want to be invisible, you know, so I can go and see what my, you know, ex-wife or ex-husband is doing, you know, and because I'm you know, people say some really funny things, really. So icebreakers, we do that. And again, we build, trying to build camaraderie. We're trying to build a we feeling. We're trying to bond. Because of that bonding and that trust over time, people are more likely to share the truth about what they find hidden in their unconscious, flattering things and things that they're ashamed of. The things that Shawn and I have been hearing are not things that people are going to disclose at their bowling group. They have a support group called a bowling team. No, we're hearing some really intimate stuff, which normal society would consider shameful, and there would be terrible judgments put on these people. And that's not at all happening. There's a really non-judgmental environment. The structure of the script for the breakout groups, again, there are service jobs. I mentioned that this is how the group members have a sense of ownership. And by the way, the ownership and the sense of belonging, the we feeling, manifests in terms of the extremely low dropout rate. We're about 13 weeks into it. We're over 3 months into it. Only one person out of 12 has dropped out. So that is a testament to our success in creating this sense of bonding and that sense of ownership. Again, leadership group. Yes, compassionate silent listening. Looks like I'm repeating myself here. Compassionate silent listening. Nobody gives words of wisdom, as I said earlier, might land the wrong way on people. A little bit more about the process. The Zoom meetings are supplemented by Facebook Messenger communication. Shawn and I set it up so that there's one big messenger group, and that's called the Golden Shadow group. So there are 12 people in the Golden Shadow group, and people are posting on there on a regular basis. People are posting on there. So yes, we do meet once a week on Zoom, but we are meeting on a daily basis. And some people are a lot more active than other people on Facebook Messenger. But the big group meets online. And also we have two small groups on Facebook Messenger. The Phoenix group, there's N of 6. There's 6 people in that group. And then the Butterfly group has its own private meeting. So the Phoenix group people don't get to see what the Butterfly group people are talking about, and vice versa. But everybody gets to see what's posted in the Golden Shadow group. And again, this strengthens a sense of camaraderie. Now, a little bit about preliminary evaluation of participant benefits. This is not an intervention that went through peer review and the research ethics committee at the University of Windsor. We're just doing this out of the church as a community outreach, a project to benefit people. And it's a no cost. We're not collecting formal data or anything like that. This will not be published in peer-reviewed journals because, again, we don't have REB approval. But we do have some observations we'd like to share in terms of preliminary evaluation of participant benefits. There are some formative outcomes I'd like to just bring to your attention. Retention after 3 months of weekly Zoom meetings has been 94%. That is incredible. When we're talking about such sensitive material, digging into the unconscious and finding some really embarrassing and shameful things. By the way, there's a real strong emphasis on self-compassion. There's a real strong emphasis on self-compassion. I haven't mentioned that yet, but people are always watching, and we're always recommending and urging people to go to YouTube and watch Dr. Chris Germer, Self-Compassion Break. It's 13 minutes. Actually, we build that in sometimes to the homework assignments. Also, Kristen Neff, right? There's one person dropped out, and some more outcomes. The average weekly attendance has been 82%, which is incredibly high. That's a remarkable attendance. Sometimes one or two people are absent, and they always announce their absence in the Facebook Messenger group, and they always have good reasons for being absent. I think I've got less than a minute here. Anecdotal evidence of the intervention impact on participants. I'll give you, in summary and conclusion, some anecdotal evidence of intervention impact on participants. The depth of honest, a deep sharing has been sometimes profound. And again, that's just anecdotal. I can witness to that. Shawn can be a witness to that. Regular disclosure of embarrassing or shameful secrets happens. And this is not something that's not normal in other kinds of groups. And so we think that this is an encouraging sign, a sign of that it's helping. There's the occasional show of strong emotions during Zoom meetings. This occasional show of strong emotions can involve crying and tears of sadness, and also it can involve crying or tears of joy and gratitude. I myself broke down on at least one occasion with I couldn't talk anymore because I was crying tears of joy and gratitude. And I'm not the only one who expressed a strong emotion during the meetings. Some more outcomes: spontaneous comments made on Facebook Messenger. Sometimes people will spontaneously make comments. For example, one participant recently talked about how shy she has been and how now she is comfortable. She feels comfort in disclosing sensitive information. And this is not normal for her. She had this awareness and she shared it spontaneously on Facebook Messenger. And this is the end. And I just want to thank everybody for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hart. And thank you, Melanie and Shawn, for your wonderful presentation. Unfortunately, we ran out of time for question and answers. We will have to proceed to the next keynote session shortly. Thank you again for your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for everybody attending.
Thank you so much.
Sing me a sad song over and over. I'll be alright by and by. Let me be consumed in a love divine to find where the treasure lies. I want to hear that small voice whisper to my forgotten soul. They say it's never too late to start again. What breaks your heart will make you